Right, back live tonight here on In Focus, and thank you for staying with us. Former City of Johannesburg Executive Mayor Dr. Mpho Phalatse has resigned as a DA councillor in the Metro. She remains in the party. Her last day in the municipal politics of the city is September 30th. She, however, of course, says she remains a full member of the Democratic Alliance for now. Dr. Phalatse says she is just quitting as a councillor. She joins us now to tell us a little bit more where to from here. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. The last time I spoke to you, you were coming out of a rather bruising campaign, and you said, no more politics. I'm taking my family on holiday. We'll talk when I come back. Maybe I'll decide where to next. But you're saying over the last couple of months at least, you've been concerned about your own professional life, where you were, the role that you were playing in council. What got you concerned?
Well, a number of things. On the one hand, our council has degenerated over time. This has worsened ever since the new speaker took over, with the new executive as well, and a lot of the illegal decisions that are happening in council. It just does not make sense to be in that kind of space. And with the opposition also not being able to effectively oppose and challenge what the executive is doing, it really feels like we're in no man's land. It's very demoralizing. It feels like we're not going anywhere. As you know, I'm not the caucus leader anymore. I'm a PR councillor. I feel like a wasted resource, and I'm concerned about continuing to be in such an unprofessional space as to what that's doing to me as a professional. I believe that I need to rescue myself and get into a professional space so I can continue to hone my skills, grow, develop and prepare for my next assignment. And that is why I've made this decision to take a bit of a step back into medicine.
Yeah. So somebody who can listen to that, maybe read it the wrong way and say, Dr. Mpho Phalatse is not maybe so much of a great follower, but she just wants to lead. And when she's no longer leading caucus, it doesn't feel like she wants to sit in the seat and be a councillor.
I have actually been led many times. When I joined the city in 2016, I was not a caucus leader. In fact, I was just a PR councillor. I got appointed MMC shortly thereafter. I was still not caucus leader. I wasn't leading the caucus. I was led by then Mayor Herman Mashaba, and so on. And after he resigned, again, I didn't put my hand up to be leader. I was led by then Councillor Leonard. So no, it's not true that I don't want to be led. I cannot continue in an environment that just does not make sense. I cannot continue to waste myself away. I believe I have a lot to give, and positioned strategically, I can continue to contribute meaningfully to society.
Is that because you don't think you would be able, or is there no platform, or maybe it's both, for you to do that as a councillor right now, your activist work in the Democratic Alliance? Does it not allow you that space?
So first of all, we need to remember how we got here. Firstly, we don't have numbers. We were in government. Our government did not last because we don't have numbers. We're now in opposition, but we're such a fragmented opposition. Our opposition bloc is bickering and mudslinging all the time, and these are parties that were together in government. It's quite demoralizing. I believe that if we had a strengthened voice, we'd be able to do more. But a lot of what I'm concerned about is beyond my control, but it's also things that I've tried to change, and I'm satisfied in myself. I've got the peace that I've tried. You know, I have fought to the highest office in my own political party, even just in terms of council and in relating to other political parties. I also believe that I've done my best. I believe that I'm now at a point where I have to accept that I cannot do anything further until the next elections, and the numbers look better. In the meantime, I have a responsibility to utilize myself correctly as a resource.
Yeah, so do you still sit today and look at that situation that is clearly frustrating you to the point where you say, let me go use my skills elsewhere, and say, had you listened to me, council would look different?
I had a different idea of how things should unfold in the city. Unfortunately, yes, I had a different idea at times from even my political party. Yes, sometimes think had we gone a different direction, things would be different. but it has happened, the ship has sailed, and I'm at a point of acceptance, and I'm looking forward now. I will continue to serve this nation. I will get back into public office at the right time, in the right environment. But in the meantime, the thing with being a professional is that you need continuous professional development. Currently, I'm not getting that in council. If I continue in council and do nothing about my professional state, I will become rusty and I will not be useful for the nation in the future. So I do have a responsibility to steward myself correctly, and I believe that that's what I'm doing by removing myself and placing myself in an environment where I can continue to grow and develop so I can have something to give when I come back.
Yeah. Well, how do you characterize this current inability of the opposition to work together, and the mudslinging and so on and so forth, and putting that in the context, of course, of the bigger multi-party charter for South Africa?
You know, for me, it's very confusing to watch and quite frustrating, actually, because on the one hand, we're signing agreements and we're saying we want to work together. On the other hand, we're going into the public domain and we're saying things about each other that suggest that there are issues that we're not able to resolve behind closed doors. So it does send confusing messages. It does not inspire hope. And I do hope that between now and next year's elections, we can get our house in order and begin to inspire confidence in South Africans that something can be done with our nation next year to take it on a positive trajectory.
Yeah. One would say well, firstly, let's not assume. Let's reiterate why you left private practice to start with.
So I left private practice because I wanted to contribute towards building the country. I was a doctor. I was subject to what the powers that be decided my work environment should be. And half the time it was less than what it was supposed to be. So I worked at Alex Clinic, for instance. I was expected to perform procedures without the necessary supplies. I had a lot of frustration, and I realized instead of complaining, I need to go out there and see what is not happening and fix it myself. And that's why I stepped into politics. I believe in the time, it's been 7 years since 2016 when I joined the city. There's a lot that I've achieved in healthcare, firstly as an MMC for health, but also just as the mayor. Beyond healthcare, you know, the work we did around energy sufficiency and so on in the city. So I'm quite satisfied that I was true to my mission until, of course, I hit the roadblocks that I've hit. And I've got to be realistic about what I can change and what I can't change. Some things I cannot change. I've tried. And beyond this, it's really in the hands of other people to start introspecting and start being team members and think about the bigger picture as opposed to egos and our own personal interests.
So one would say the reason why you left the healthcare industry, not necessarily left, but of course you were still MMC, you were still in the space. Those issues have still not been fixed. So would it not serve even your business that you want to continue to work at, for the system to be fixed, for that business to be able to function the way that it's supposed to be?
So as I said, as an MMC for health, there's a lot that we achieved. So we were able to fix a lot. Did we fix everything? No, we did not. The business I'm going into is in the private sector, where things do run a lot better. That's why most South Africans have a medical aid who can afford it, because things work in private health care. It's unfortunate. There's a lot that still needs to happen in public health care. Unfortunately, at the moment, public health care is in the hands of the NC government at a national level and at a provincial level in Gauteng as well. And so we are not in government, and I'm not even functioning in those spaces. I'm at a local level. Now, what have I done locally in healthcare? We extended hours of service in Johannesburg, and most of our clinics function beyond the 4 o'clock mark. We've rolled out substance abuse treatment centers, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of reform that happened, electronic health records that we introduced in the space. So I'm satisfied with the reforms that we were able to bring about. Yes, we didn't have enough time. We could have continued. But within the sphere of local government, I'm satisfied with what I've been able to do. I've not worked at national, and I've not worked at a provincial level, except before I came into politics. I did contribute quite significantly within the Gauteng health space. And I believe that the people there have a responsibility to drive reform. I cannot drive it from where I'm sitting.
Yeah. So,
even if resign from council.
Right. So, I've been listening to some of the interviews you've done, even now, what you're mentioning. So, you say things like, I cannot do something where I am right now, or you say something like, I'm still a member at the moment, or you're saying, I feel it's the right thing to do for now to still remain a member of the Democratic Alliance. Yet, they asked you a question earlier to say, are you going to be campaigning for them? You were non-committal about that particular aspect of things. So I want to ask, why stay in an organization where you're not committal about whether or not you will campaign for them?
I can safely say to you, Thabo, there's no perfect political party in South Africa at the moment, across the spectrum. The Democratic Alliance is not perfect, and neither are any of the other political parties. I have found the greatest alignment for myself in the Democratic Alliance for various reasons: policy alignment, cultural alignment. I wanted a professional workplace, and the DA gave me that. And yes, there are things I don't agree with. I do not have a compelling alternative. But at the same time, I'm not compelled to make that decision now. I don't feel like it's urgent for me to make that decision now. I've decided to focus inwardly on my own development, on preparing myself for my next assignment. I'm observing, I'm introspecting, and I believe in time things will take shape and I will know decisively what I want to do in that moment. I'm not going to predict the future, but equally I'm not married to the Democratic Alliance. So in other words, if we reach a place where we have such diametrically opposed ideas of how the country should be going, I reserve the right to make my decision at that time. But right now, I'm in the Democratic Alliance. I'm staying put, and I'm focusing on my development.
Yeah. There's no perfect party, and some of your colleagues who you were with in the Democratic Alliance have left and formed other organizations. Have you looked at them? Because others, for example, would look at Action SA and say, it's not really that far away from the Democratic Alliance. And maybe those major things that you are having difficulty with in the DA might be less so if you're in Action SA.
Action SA, in my view, is a replica of the Democratic Alliance. For me, to leave the DA for Action SA is a zero-sum exercise. It does not make any sense. So I would rather than stay where I am, because I don't see the difference that would pull me into Action SA, for example. And that's why I said there's no perfect party. You weigh the pros and cons and you find the place of greatest comfort. And that place for me currently is the DA. I recognize there are limitations in the Democratic Alliance. I recognize the trust deficit that exists between us and the electorate that really blocks us from being able to position ourselves correctly and govern and take this country forward. I recognize all those limitations, but I am not compelled currently that there is an alternative that is convincing enough for me to say I now want to take the leap and move into this political party. And like I said, there's no urgency for me to make that decision now. I'm focused on my development.
So what are your biggest areas of discomfort, except for the egos and so on and so forth? But if you look at the substantial issues, what are your biggest areas of discomfort that could be done better?
As regards to?
The DA.
Oh, the Democratic Alliance.
Yes.
Well, there's various things. I mean, I don't always agree with some of our systems, some of our processes, internal issues, really, some of the culture internally, stuff like that. There's obviously things I can talk about in the public domain. I'm still a member of the DA. There's things that we need to discuss internally. But yes, there are quite a few things that personally I would have loved to see change. But even with those things, I'm not compelled that stepping out at the moment is the right decision. Should that change tomorrow? Should I have a better alternative? Or should they worsen to a point where I can no longer stand to be in the party? I reserve the right to make a decision. Right now is not that time.
Yeah. So I heard you earlier on saying you would support In fact, if you have the opportunity to do so, well, you're still there, and you might probably still have the motion to dissolve council. With all those with all those issues that are still remaining within the Democratic Alliance, do you think if council were to be dissolved tomorrow, that the DA would do better, would get a better mandate from the people of the city of Johannesburg?
I definitely think so. I believe it wholeheartedly, Thabo. I think there's no doubt as to the DA's capability when it comes to running government. I do think not only even just from anecdotal evidence, there has been empirical evidence to that effect, that where the DA governs well, and I believe that our residents know that now. They've seen the DA difference. They've seen when we were in office in the 14 months, and they're seeing the difference now. So yes, I am convinced that if we were to dissolve council, the DA would have a much better electoral outcome, because people at a local level are concerned about service delivery. They're concerned about water, electricity, roads, traffic lights, those kinds of things. And the DA would be able to deliver those things in spite of whatever shortcomings we may have as a party.
But how so when you've got so many smaller political parties? I heard Fred Nell yesterday saying that the Democratic Alliance would prefer that the other smaller parties at least humble themselves and be less, so that we have a situation where even if there's a coalition, it's a coalition between three parties, is much better to manage. I don't see small parties doing that. They've already gotten seats. They've already maneuvered around with those seats to be able to be MMCs and whatever else. I don't see them giving that up. So I don't see a DA having a better outcome than what they've got previously.
So the first step is to convince 2/3 of council to give the strategy a go. If we can get past that, then it's in the hands of the electorate. You give power back to the people, and they're deciding what kind of government they want. I believe that people have seen what a fragmentation in the electoral outcome leads to, and I believe they've had enough. And I do believe that people will be more calculating, and yes, they're likely to vote more for the bigger parties, so that even if you end up with a coalition, it's a manageable coalition of fewer political parties. That's what I believe will happen. But you're right, the first step is to convince at least 2/3 of council. The smaller parties will not make a dent if 2/3 of council can agree that this is the way to go.
Dr. Mpho Phalatse, I appreciate you. Thank you very much for engaging us this evening. All the best. We'll be watching you in the private sector and hopefully getting you back into active politics again soon.
Thank you, Thabo.
That's Dr. Mpho Phalatse there on her departure as councillor in the city of Johannesburg. That stint coming to an end on September 30th.